What's up, guys? Welcome to The Smart Student. My name is Chelsea Seaburn, and I'm happy you're here today because this is going to be the start of a video series where we're going to break down academic writing starting from the very beginning. In other words, right now, I want to talk about basic sentence structure and grammar and how those two relate to each other. And before you run away because grammar is gross, hear me out. Let me know if you can relate to this. You didn't go to college to be a writer. You went to college to study your degree. I know I went to college to get a business degree, not to major in literature, although I did grow up to be a YouTuber that teaches academic writing. Besides the point. Surprise, you're in college and writing is now a big part of your life. If you can relate to that, let me know down below, because now I'm officially going to start on our quest of breaking down academic writing starting with basic sentence structure. And so, sentence structure, what does this mean? Well, it simply refers to how grammatical elements are put together to form a sentence. Easy. I like to say sentence structure boils down to two things in particular. That's going to be the elements of a sentence and their corresponding grammar for those elements. And if you're not quite clear on what exactly grammar is simply sets of rules that govern the way we put those elements together. So the elements, I like to say, are our building blocks of a sentence. Grammar is what dictates what you do with those building blocks, how you build your sentences. So let's go ahead and start with those three basic elements of a sentence. You have your subject, your verb, and your object. Now, this is all stuff we're familiar with. We learned it when we were younger. However, we need to start here in order to understand college level grammar. So let's take the subject. This is your basic who or what of your sentence. In other words, person, place, or thing. Your verb. This is the action of the subject, A verb, it's what you do. Again, we're familiar with this stuff. And then finally, your object is simply the target of the action. So what is the action of the subject directed towards? I like to say that your verb is what links your subject to your object. So for instance, let's take a simple sentence. We have the student wrote a research paper. Do you know which is which in terms of the three elements? Yeah, you probably do. The student is going to be your subject. Wrote is going to be the action or the verb. And then research paper is going to be the object. So as you can see, student, that's the who of the sentence. Wrote, that's what the subject is doing. That's the action they're performing. And then research paper, that's the target of the action, aka the verb is linking the subject to its object. Are you with me so far? Cool. Now, let's talk about the corresponding grammar rules for each of these elements. One, we have perspective. Next, we have tense. Finally, we have voice. Let's take perspective. What is perspective? Well, this is going to be the perspective of the subject in the sentence. In other words, the author's point of view. What method are they using to convey their writing? This is where that good old-fashioned first, second, and third person comes into play. In other words, is the author writing from their point of view? Are they writing from your point of view? Or are they writing from a narrative point of view, aka an objective point of view? Moving on to tense, which we mean verb tense, this simply refers to the time the action took place. So here you have your past, present, and future. In other words, did the action already happen, took place in the past? Is it happening right now in the present? Or is it something that hasn't happened yet? It's set to happen in the future. Now, finally, we have voice. And voice is a little more ambiguous, but by definition, voice refers to the verb and the subject and the object associated with it. Quite frankly, you have two of them. You have active voice and passive voice. And I actually think the best way to understand these is with an example. So let's bring back that sentence. The student wrote a research paper. This would be considered active voice because the subject is performing the action directly to the object. Now, if we were to say a research paper was written by a student, that would make it passive voice because now the subject is being acted upon by the verb rather than performing the verb firsthand. So we know this sentence is written in an active voice. However, what perspective and what tense is it using? Well, the perspective is going to be third person because we're talking from an objective third party perspective. by saying the student. And also, it's going to be in past tense because the student wrote a research paper. It already happened. Research paper is finished. So, as you can see, those three elements relate to these three different grammar rules. And now, if you're thinking that this is really basic information, when it comes to college paper writing, here's some of the questions you're going to run into. One, is it okay to use first person? And if so, when and where can we use first person in our writing? How about verb tense? For instance, when you're writing your introduction, are you writing in past, present, future? Well, you're probably writing in the present tense because you're introducing new material. But now, moving on to your methods, would you continue to write in present tense? Well, probably not because your methods were already performed. Therefore, you could write them in past tense. And quite frankly, in your methods, could you use first person? You're the one who performed those actions. Or should you leave that first person out of your paper altogether? These are questions I get all the time. And all of these grammar rules, by the way, are in the APA manual and what's acceptable and what's not. And so in the next few videos, I'm going to take each one of these grammar rules and we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts in regard to using them in your academic papers. But that's it for now. Let me know if you have any personal questions when it comes to grammar. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video, starting with perspective.